All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Jorge's Isolation Podcast. This is me, your host, Jorge Chapa, and I am joined today by the studly Aldo Uribe. How are you, my friend? You are an actor,
I'm
you're a fighter, you're a boxer, you're a soon-to-be dad.
yeah,
And honestly, by the time this comes out, because I record ahead of schedule, you will
yeah.
be a dad.
I will be calling myself daddy from
Yeah,
uh, from now on, whether it's appropriate or inappropriate.
I've been doing that for
Um,
years.
but I'm so excited, bro. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm so happy. Baby's due on Saturday. Everything's on schedule. She's doing great, so that's all I can
yeah.
ask for. So
Dio excited?
she's thrilled. I mean, we're both so excited. We're just kind of like in a good place for it and stuff, and just like just ready, just counting down the days.
Are you what hospital are you?
Lenox Hill.
Lenox Hill? Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's on the Upper East Side in Manhattan. So
yeah.
little
We were at
Manhattan, baby.
yeah, we have ours Anapa was at NYU, Langone.
Okay.
So they're on the east side as well. So
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, man. So what's been going on since I last saw you? I moved down to Texas
When did you move exactly?
almost a year ago in December
Okay.
of last year. Yeah, like December, I think 20th is when I came down or when I was here, or
Yeah.
15th. I think the 15th.
Yeah, you're going on a year, bro. That's crazy.
Yeah, man. It's been
Yeah.
crazy. It
Yeah, I mean, so much has happened and also not happened that it's like it's hard to remember what anything is.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's I feel like we're really fortunate and it's been chill. Obviously it's like a really weird standstill and a sort of like a
Mhm.
weird pause from stuff, but it's been like sort of really healthy and it's good for us. I feel like we're really
Yeah.
lucky to have amazing partners in life, and so
Mhm.
you're locked up with the right person. So I feel for the people that especially in New York, you have like two, three, four roommates, and you don't even like them,
Oh yeah.
and then you can't pay
Yeah.
the bills and all that other stuff, and you're locked up with them.
Yeah.
So I definitely feel for all the people that have gone through it. Yeah.
Oh, I know. I didn't even think about a lot of people don't think about that when I mean in New York they sublet rooms like for a lot of people if you're watching and listening in New York
Yeah.
you find a place you don't
I'm gonna stop you real quick just
yeah
because it's a little crackly again, like it was before.
now.
There we go.
Man, my sound is just it's going in and out. It's
Bro, it's
my
cables and
microphone.
cords. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. I mean it was working fine and I think my daughter was playing with this earlier.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it had anything to do with that, but get used to that.
Yeah. We
But
set it for everything to break.
oh, I know. Yeah, things are going to break, and they're always going to break.
Yeah.
One of the things is, as I was saying, was that um, when people go to New York, or when they think they're going to go to New York and they're going to live, they're going to get an apartment. Most of the time, you're just going to get a room in an apartment,
Yeah.
and there's
Yeah.
going to be people that were already living there. It's called a sublet, and it's kind of the luck of the draw. If you can find people and split an apartment, that's even better because you at least know the
Yeah.
people. But a lot of time you move there and you're stuck with what you have a lot of time. And
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that during the COVID because you could be with some crazies and people dealing with some stuff
Yeah.
that you weren't prepared for, and you only see them crossing paths like going in and out of the apartment. But that's got to be tough for a
Yeah.
lot of people right now.
I mean, even someone you might know, you're just not used to being around them or whatever. I know when I here the first year I went to City College and I lived at the dorms there, and I had a shared room, so it was like two beds like next to each other.
Yeah.
And luckily, my roommate was really cool. Um, but it was like he would hook up with people literally like 5 feet away from me, and I would just be like turned over, just like
Yeah. Yeah.
pretending to not listen. Um, and then my first roommate, like my first apartment,
Yeah.
had a roommate that I sort of chose. It was like we had a group of friends from the dorms, and everybody got apartments. And there
Mhm.
was only two of us left that didn't move into this like massive apartment that they all moved into.
Yeah.
And so we were like, oh, so we'll live together or whatever. We ended up getting a one bedroom, And just to like split it and to save a little money, I made the living room my bedroom, and he took the bedroom, and we
Yeah.
shared it like that. And so, it took me 3 years in New York to have my own bedroom,
Yeah.
which is nuts.
Yeah.
So,
No, and that's like
so
that
yeah, it's totally
happens.
different.
That happens all the time, no?
Yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah, man. New York is a different beast. Like living down here back in Texas and having the amount of like rooms that we have, like the square footage
Yeah,
for what we're paying. In our apartment we're in Jersey City, so right across the river there
yeah,
from Manhattan. Our apartment was like 950 square feet, and our house now
that's still
is
great. Like
it's
for New
great.
York area.
Yes. Yeah, we had
Yeah,
we lucked out because Rosa found a a two-bedroom, two bath in the same building that we were at, and I think they messed up with the pricing. So we hopped on it, we pounced, and they couldn't really correct it to where they wanted to. So we got it for like $700 less than what they
wow, that's
wanted
great.
us to pay.
Yeah,
And so that we were lucky with that. But even then, now we're in a house that we own and we have three times the square footage and we're paying a lot less, like almost
yeah,
half, a
yeah,
little bit more than half of what we were paying over there. And that's
yeah,
like one of the things. We have a yard, we have a garage. I have my weights in the garage. And
yeah.
it's been just it's been great for the part of like not having to be in an apartment, a small apartment for COVID. Cause I can only imagine how that has been.
So the most amazing thing, it was sort of hell while we were going through it,
Hmm.
but we had last year we were living in a tiny apartment in Harlem, which it was beautiful for what it was, and it was
Hmm.
great for us at the time. But it really was probably like 450 square feet. Like I'm
Mm,
talking real tiny.
yeah.
And it was a great price, but it was awesome. It was right off 126th and Lenox, so it was like super central. Get
Mm,
downtown really easily, and also the neighborhood is really great there. Um, but we move into this apartment quickly and all this stuff because everything moves so fast. You just have to jump on it.
yeah.
Even though you look at it, it's sort of blind. You just go for it.
Yes.
And so we get into this space, and we just start finding out all the things that are wrong with it as we go on there. And
Hmm.
when we move in, the broker was just like, we noticed that the building had been for sale, but it had been for sale for like 2 years. And the broker was like, listen, these people haven't been able to get rid of it for all this time. Like, you're fine, whatever. And so we're there for about 3 months, and they sell the building. And all of a sudden, we start getting letters like, hey, you're going to have to move because we sold the building. And so we're just like
Mm,
terminating leases and blah, 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 which we had just spent all our money, especially in New York. You have to put up like a couple months, and
yeah.
then we paid a broker's fee. So we had spent literally every dime we had. 3 months in, they're like, get out, and we have no money to even do it. So at first we're freaking out and all this stuff. And long story short, for I would say maybe another 5 months or so, we ended up having to sort of really stand our ground and really learn all the laws and all that stuff and defend ourselves because what they were doing was really illegal. And luckily, the guy who bought the building was a really nice guy, and I was really able to communicate with him. But essentially, I had to go through sort of a little bit of legal processes and stuff,
Yeah.
and we forced them to pay us to leave, and which is one of the most unique New York things. And I just said that really well, unique New
Yeah.
York.
That was awesome.
I'm proud of myself after I said it. Um, um, yeah.
Bask in
And
your glory right
and
now.
so yeah, it ended up being like the most amazing thing ever
Yeah.
because of all that insecurity and all that pressure and the frustration. I was like, we can't get in this position again. And we had planned to try to start having kids around this year.
Hmm.
And so all of that, like, if it hadn't have been that negative, it wouldn't have pushed me to this place. But I
Yeah.
started looking for homes and stuff, and we closed on our house in the Bronx in January or February.
Nice.
And as soon as they gave us that check, we moved right over here,
Yeah.
and it really facilitated everything. And also, then this year went to shit, and so
Yeah.
that money was like extremely crucial.
Hmm.
Everything came together, and if I hadn't have put pressure on them and defended myself so well, we would have stayed there. They would have We would have gotten to this whole COVID thing, and I don't think they would have had the money to
No.
pay us out. because they basically want to tear that building down and start it all new. And I'm sure they're in a mess of problems financially now,
Yeah.
which, I wish them the best because they were nice to us in the end. Um, but that's like sort of as New York as it could get is,
Yeah.
that whole situation was so crazy. And it ended up being, like one of the best things that has happened to
Yeah.
us in I've been in New York for almost 13 years now,
Mm-hmm.
2007. So yeah, like 13 years.
Yeah.
And, and it ended up setting us up. So we have the space, we have the baby coming now. And even though it's still a small place, we were able to own it. And it was also a thing that sort of helped us have some more security so we could stay here, so we could keep pursuing our dreams
Yeah.
and stay focused on work and not have to worry about having to take too many other jobs and other things like that to pay the bills and stray away from the acting life.
Yeah. And how is the acting life, or how was the acting life prior to the shutdown, the March 13th shutdown? How was it then? And then
Yeah,
during, like, the beginning, middle, and now? So, like,
yeah.
January,
So
February, how
it's
was it for
pretty.
you?
So January and February was actually really great for me. Last year I transitioned from my old agency, and at the perfect time, this manager had randomly hit me up because like she repped someone that knew me, and they were looking for someone. It was a whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like sort of insecure. And towards the end of the year, she set me up with my new agency that I'm with now. So we had just started getting the ball rolling last year, and so then this year started, and everything started kind of going great. And at the end of last year, or sort of in the middle of last year, I also started working with the Fight House with Dave Anzuelo,
Yeah.
and the first show that we did ended up going to Broadway. So I
Yeah.
started the year as a Broadway fight director
That's awesome.
after like having only done it for like 6 months, and it was because one of the roles was a boxer, and they have a fight scene, and he needed to look like a boxer and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started the year off with that. I was having great auditions. I ended up booking a really cool role. I forget what it was for exactly, but basically it was like these commercials
Mm-hmm.
that they hired like award-winning directors to do short films instead of doing the commercials. And I
Okay.
ended up booking this really great job with the director of Lion, but then they wanted to do it non-union, and I'm SAG,
Yeah.
and I tried to work around it, and I couldn't do it, and so that fell through, and that was right in like the end of February, beginning of March. I was really frustrated with that because I really wanted to work with him and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But everything was starting to get going, and pilot season started and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
I just felt like I was in a really good place because with the insecurity of the year before, feeling like my old agency, that relationship was dwindling,
Yeah.
and they weren't really doing anything to me for me,
Yes.
and leaving them for someone that I barely knew, and then trusting her to get me representation beyond being a manager. She got me agents and stuff, and so it just kind of felt like I was finally starting to get going, and
Yeah.
it was interesting. But from March until last month, other than maybe one or two random sort of self-tape commercial things, I
Mm-hmm.
did not have a single audition for the first time in that long of a period, for the
Yeah.
first time in maybe 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And it sounds scary, but mentally, it was like so good for me
Yeah.
because I had spent
Yeah.
so much time stressing over the past few years, and I would never take a break or quit acting in any kind of way
Mm-hmm.
on my own,
Yeah.
and so being forced to do that in a way was so good for me mentally, to just kind of find myself again and find some freedom. And then, like a month ago, my neighbor actually in my new house
Yeah.
does sound for TV and film.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in the unions and stuff, and he's a little bit closer to the ground in terms of understanding productions that are starting back up and stuff. And he was like, "You should look out because I'm starting to get a lot of opportunities for work." And immediately, I got some really amazing audition stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, that was happening local, like smaller stuff like Blue Bloods and things like that. But then also big projects for next year, which was like a film and some series
Hmm.
leads and stuff for next year. Um, so I was really happy to sort of take that break and then come at it sort of fresh and have that opportunity now. And I'm hoping that sort of things can move forward
Yeah.
from there. But this this life.
This life
I
is
feel like
it's a pain. It really is. And
yeah,
I agree with you that I had Yuval Vasquez on uh several
yeah.
like fourth, fifth episode. And
I love him. I love him so much.
he
He's a
he
sweetheart. He's
is a
an incredible
sweetheart.
guy.
He's very insightful. And
Yeah,
his big thing was not talking about the business, or like let's not do shop talk. Like that's what
yeah,
the whole thing was. And we were talking about how the time at that point, I think it was only like maybe August or maybe just still July when I started,
yeah,
when I talked to him. And he's like, during this time, just enjoy it. You know, like
yeah,
this is a time to reset. This is a time like it's gonna happen. If things are gonna happen, it's gonna happen. But when else in history have we been given this opportunity to spend every single day with our loved ones like we are?
yeah,
Like I, how many like for me, like I am so blessed. Even though I did stress from time to time, like I had to really think and be thankful for the time that I got to spend with my daughter every single day. I got to wake
absolutely.
up with her and I got to play with her all day and then put her to bed. Like, how many fathers get to do that at this age?
Yeah,
I got to see her first steps, hear her say her first words. You know, it's
yeah,
just so many different milestones that I was there for because of this pandemic. You know, like
yeah,
I'm here in Texas. So if I were to book anything, it wouldn't be like a New York job where I could come home at night. I would have
yeah,
to fly out and I would be gone for such a long time, or just depending on how long. Like if it was in Chicago, if it was in
yeah,
Albuquerque, wherever they're shooting, you know. And this is one of those times where I think you can agree, like this probably is the longest I had without an audition as well, for like 5 years. And
yeah,
there were times, yeah, where I do, think like, oh no, the business is done with me because A, because of COVID, and B, because I'm in South Texas. Like,
yeah,
like I'm not even in, like, I'm not
yeah.
even near Austin. I'm 5 hours south of Austin. And
Wow, I didn't
so,
know it was that far.
yeah,
Yeah,
man, we're on the border, like just the
yeah,
southern tip.
yeah,
And, but it is really one of those decompression moments because you also, it's, if you can agree with me, for like we've talked about this before and talked about the business and auditions and agent stuff and whatever,
yeah, yeah.
um that the difference between this drought of not having auditions is that no one else had auditions, so
That's
you
the
don't
thing.
see them posting anything on social media. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You don't see someone booking this or like, oh, booked and blessed hashtag and all this other
yeah,
stuff. Like
yeah,
no one was doing anything. So it made it that much easier to deal with
yeah.
the lack of, auditions, right?
No, honestly, that was the thing is you could finally rest easy because absolutely nobody was working. I had
Mm-hmm.
friends that were on series that got shut down and they still haven't picked up and different things like that. So sort of feeling like we're all in the even playing field is where you can finally sort of relax. I really don't try to sort of pay attention to what other people are doing.
Yeah.
I definitely obviously want enough for me. You know what I mean? I don't really,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I feel like I have a pretty level head of understanding that we're all so different that like if someone else is working, like I couldn't do it because we're polar opposites,
Yeah.
even if we even sort of look the same, if we're the same sort of type thing or whatever. Um, so yeah, it was that it was really refreshing. But even when things are busy, I feel like you can't help but feel like, is it over? Like
Yeah. Well,
um,
you could have worked, and then on the way home that night or the next day, that's when like, oh man, is this gonna happen again? Like, or was that
yeah,
it? And
yeah,
that's the one thought that I tend to have. And so if that's the case, I always tell myself like, okay, if this is it, I enjoyed every moment of it. I soaked it up,
that's
and
the thing, man.
it's tough. It's really
That's
tough.
how I really feel about it. Even I was making a little clip. I think you saw it, the thing
Hmm.
I put
Which
on
looks awesome.
Instagram, and thanks, man. I appreciate it. I'm excited to sort of branch out and do a little bit more and just tell my story. But even looking at that stuff, it's like, especially both of us being from South Texas,
Hmm.
you know, um, I didn't know until recently, and I knew about my parents' sacrifice in general. My parents came from Mexico, but my dad had never told me that when he first moved here, he slept in his car for the first 2 weeks,
Wow.
and my mom stayed back in Mexico because he couldn't even afford to bring her in and give her a decent sort of life until he got things settled. So,
Yeah.
when I think about that, and I think about being on a set period,
Yeah.
I'm extremely grateful for the things that I have been able to accomplish, big or small, and
Yeah.
to be able to have the privilege of being an actor when parents like ours sacrificed everything just to even put food on the table. Um, you really have to have those moments of gratefulness. Now, I do think there's like a double-edged sword of that because then we come from that, and then we're so humble and we're so grateful that we'll take the scraps that others won't take
Yeah.
because we come from that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the story's not over. The story's not over for either of us. I know we have a
No.
lot of life left to live in general, and with our acting careers. And so, although I'm extremely grateful, I still have to sort of think beyond that and have faith and manifest more positive, huge things for myself.
Yeah.
Because I think everybody deserves it if you really care.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to believe that I have something to offer that the world wants, and so um, that's where I really taken this time and been forced to for the same reason because nothing else is going on to really develop projects, things that I really want to do.
Yeah.
Um, I'm developing. At first, I thought I would have to write a script, but actually was able to sort of reach out to a mentor, a guy who's working and doing great as a writer, and I asked him what I should do, and he told me to really work on pitches
Yeah.
first. So I'm developing pitches for a couple different series that I would love to be the lead on. Obviously, I'm developing the sort of with me seeing myself as the central
Yeah.
character, and then also a sort of comedy film, also that I really want to get into and just show a little bit more and just have more fun. But
Mm-hmm.
the same thing. I don't know if I would have been forced to really sit down and think and do all that stuff if we hadn't have been in this moment.
Yeah. No, this is definitely giving you that time. I think with you all was there was this meme at the beginning of the
Got a little
pen.
sound thingy again.
Ah.
Yeah, can't hear you. Nothing.
Now you can hear me.
There we go. Yeah.
There we go. So like with Yule, we were talking about how there was this meme that went out and it said like, Shakespeare wrote some of his best work in isolation, and you can do it too. And you always
Yeah.
like, don't feel pressured to do that. You don't need to feel pressure
Yeah.
to do that. You don't have to do that. All you have to do is just be you. If you want to do it, go ahead. But
Yeah.
it will
Absolutely.
happen if it happens.
I don't think everybody has to do that. Even like with writing a specific script, I don't think I'm a writer like that
Yeah.
to create dialogue. But I do think I do think I have a lot of ideas that are unique, that are for this time, that are diverse, that are telling different
Hmm.
stories than what's out there. And so I agree. I feel like there's a lot of pressure. Even like we talk about like fitness stuff and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Like I know I literally put on 22 pounds during quarantine. And
Where?
today was the first time I broke, dude, it was all in my stomach. But
Oh, I
today I
see.
finally broke the 180 mark, and I've lost 14 of those 22 pounds, um, which is crazy. But
You're at the
it
180
was
mark.
such a struggle.
I'm at the 280 mark.
Well,
And I've been
bro, I
working
had
on
been
it.
walking around, because I was so active all the time.
Yeah.
First of all, like even just the walking that you do in New York
Yeah.
is the extra 300 calories, that you weren't even accounting for,
Yes.
or different things like that. And just being so active in general, I was walking around usually 168, 170, and I always pride myself. I don't stay in amazing shape year round. I just sort
Hmm.
of maintain. But in the summers, I always push myself and I set a goal to do different stuff, but also just to peak every summer, and also implement like different sort of training. But getting back to it, I feel like a lot of people feel pressure, just like creating projects or doing different
Mm-hmm.
stuff during this time to sort of maintain or better themselves and stuff like that. And I've worked in fitness for over 10 years, so
Yeah.
it's sort of my lifestyle in general. That's who I am.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, it was extremely difficult, and it was such a good learning process too, um, to sort of better understand people, um, who aren't, who are struggling with 10, 20 or more pounds.
Yeah.
So that's been a journey too. But I feel like everyone has space during this time to do whatever they want to do, to
Yeah.
figure it out. To
Absolutely.
If you want to gain the weight, and be happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If
Enjoy
you
it.
if you
Yeah.
don't want to write, if don't write, don't do whatever. Like, live
Yeah.
your life. This freedom is so unique,
Yes.
and
It's like
it's
it's a
scary, and it
historical
could be.
freedom.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
really is.
and
It,
that's where
it,
we're really privileged. In the U.S.
hmm.
that we have freedom. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
I'm sure you have family in Mexico still too, and I have
Hmm.
a good majority of my family still in Mexico. And it's like, you know, I think about them, and they don't have that same freedom
No.
to just enjoy the little moments. To spend time with your daughter. For me, with Dio being pregnant this whole time, like,
Yeah.
for us to just be relaxed while she's growing and developing, and not
Hmm.
being stressed out, and not running, trying to catch the train, and
Yeah.
you know. She hasn't had a lot of different sickness and stuff, and the things that come with pregnancy, because also I feel like it's been chill. She hasn't had to be out in the streets doing,
Yes.
hustling like we usually have to. So
Yeah. I remember when Rosa was pregnant and she would have to go on the train, and she
yeah,
was pregnant during winter, so it was awful a couple times.
yeah,
And it's like last year, was it 2019, where we had the 6 degree days. We had a couple of 6 degree
yeah,
days, and you know, luckily we have a car, so she drove in like to the city. She's like, "I'll pay for the parking today,
yeah. I
but I'm
feel
not
that.
gonna take a train for this." But yeah, and it's like you like another thing that people don't realize is like when you're in New York, yes, you might get to your train stop, your destination where the train is, but you
Yeah,
still have to walk several blocks to where you need to get to.
yeah,
It's kind of like, say, if you were going to go to, I don't know, um, Melski's or whatever, or
yeah.
even Intar. If you go to Intar and you get off like at
You're
50,
walking like 15 miles after you get off the
yes,
train.
yeah, you have to walk like blocks and blocks over. So
Yeah,
it's one of those things. And like several audition spots, even what's the Tucker, um
yeah, over there by Wall Street.
yeah, you still have to
Yeah,
walk, over there. I take the one and then still walk a block over and a block, two
yeah,
blocks down. And you do see everybody taking picture by the bull and the bull's balls, and then the defiant
yeah,
girl is like, it's crazy. That's I kind of miss all that. Like I miss
yeah.
the city. Today we had a cool front come in, so it was like in the high 50s, like
It's
surprising.
colder over there than it is here. Today
Yeah.
was 61, and my dad in San Antonio was saying it was like 40s.
Yes,
Yeah,
dude, it was cold, and we go for a walk every morning, me and the baby, and I had like a deja vu of New York,
yeah.
and
Sense memory is what we call
yeah,
that.
I mean, I used it, and I was just like, oh yes, this is New York, but without
Yeah,
people in my way, or like tourists just stopping in front of
yeah.
me as I'm
You just
walking.
pretended to elbow people that weren't
Yes,
there.
absolutely. No, it's
Cursed at a
crazy.
tree, and
Yeah, no,
yeah,
it's one of those things. I do miss the walking, and I know what you mean. Like, because
yeah,
Rose and I were talking about this. Like, we don't walk as much as we used to anymore, so
yeah,
we have to get it around the neighborhood, and at least it's a little safer.
yeah, yeah.
We can.
No, I mean,
It's got to
even now
watch out for stray
we're in the
dogs.
Bronx. We're like right, we're right here. We're on 231st, so Manhattan ends on 225th or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
We're right here. But even now, like, I have a car because I have a little parking spot and all that stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm doing a lot less walking, and yeah, man, the city has such a special thing. It's like disgusting and it's
Yes.
stressful and all these different things,
Yeah.
but the charm of this life, I definitely miss running around. I
Yeah.
feel like you take it for granted because it's
Mm-hmm.
so overwhelming all
Yeah.
this time that you're doing it. and I've been here so long now that you just get sick of it. You know, you just
Yes.
get sick of it. You want to get on the train and there's like someone pooping in the car, and
Yes.
you're like, I didn't need to see your balls today. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
But speaking of which, that was like when I took the baby into the city.
yeah,
I had an audition. It was one of those unavoidable moments that you will probably have,
yeah,
where you had to take your kid to an audition. And
yeah,
we get off, and I don't even remember the casting office. I've only been to this casting office once. It was for a commercial,
okay,
and I was I get off at the Path station there at 34th at Herald Square, and then I
okay,
go over eastbound on like 31st or something like that. And sure enough, this is my baby's first time, really in the city. She has her
yeah,
little Yankee like windbreaker on, and she's a real city girl. And
yeah,
the phone booths, they're just they gutted the phone booths, but the
yeah,
shells are still there where there was a homeless guy. I could see him squatting in it. So he's just his torso is covered, but not his balls that are hanging down, and he's taking a
yeah,
dump. And I was like, "Yep, that's your first New York moment, kid."
yeah. Those I love how they left the boots and they're
Yeah.
like a perfect little corner for you to like smoke meth or take a
Yes.
shit. You know what I mean?
It's
It's like
perfect.
perfect. I'm so glad you left them there.
Yeah.
Um,
How lazy is that? They could have taken out the whole thing.
I know. I don't get what the point is.
I
And
don't
now they
either.
put those like weird tower things that are like sketchy Wi-Fi things that have like a touch screen and
Yes.
everybody's like charging their phone there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's how the
I mean, like
government's stealing your information.
exactly. That's like exactly how you get hacked.
Yeah.
Um, but um, but yeah,
Speaking
it's crazy,
of New
man.
York moments too, you mentioned you had a car. Didn't, if I'm remembering correctly, did people flip your car over years
Yeah, so
ago?
I actually had a smart car, the little two-seater car, and I would park it on the street all the time because it's tiny. It's literally the smallest car
Yeah.
out there. And so I would, do the street parking, and you have to move it in the mornings and whatever. And one night I'm sleeping, whatever, and it's like, well, now it's morning, but whatever. I was sleeping. It was like 6 in the morning or something, and I just hear boom, 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 and I go to the door. And I'm like, rushing. I'm like, who the hell is at my door? Like, I'm like, what could it be? I look through the little people, and it's the cops. And I'm like, oh no, they finally got me. You know, they finally caught
Yeah.
up. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
No, I'm like, why the hell are the cops at my door? And I open the door, and they're like, "Do you own a Mini Cooper?" And I was like, "No, wait, what?" And I was like, "Oh, I have a smart car," and they were like, "Yeah, that." And so I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah. Why?" And they were like, "What did you do?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Your car is on the curb." And I'm like, "What do you mean my car is on the curb? Like, I don't know what you're talking about." And they were like, "Yeah, your car is on the side and it's sitting on the curb, like it's in the middle of the like walkway on the curb." And I'm like, "What?" So I'm like half asleep, freaking out. I remember it was like freezing. I get dressed, whatever, and we go out there, and they literally like cow tipped my car onto its side, onto the curb, and I guess luckily someone reported it when they heard it, and I guess they just imagined it was like a bunch of badass little 16-year-olds or something that just like were acting crazy and flipped my car. And I remember just being like, "What the hell is this?" And Dio was like furious, and me, I'm just like confused. You know what I mean? Like I'm half asleep,
That's
freezing
so
outside, my
awful.
car's on the curb, and I just had like liability on the car because it was like a used car, whatever. So I'm like, I don't know what's gonna be wrong with this thing. And so they bring the police tow truck, and they just put chains through my rims and just like poof, pull it back on its side. It bounces, and they're like, "There you go." And luckily, it only broke the window and sort of
Okay.
smushed the mirror on the side. I literally duct taped the mirror like back into position. I got the window
Hmm.
fixed because I remember it was snowing that day. So I was like, man, I have to get the window fixed like right now. So
Yeah.
I just found like some random place in the hood that fixed windows. I don't even know how
Yeah.
they did it, but they just like put a new window in there like nothing, and it was fixed. It cost me like $100 or something, and the car was perfectly fine, and that was the end of it. But it was nuts, bro.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
that. Oh my God. It's funny now, looking back at it now,
It's
but
hilarious and
I
nuts.
can
Yeah.
imagine just waking up at 6 in the morning and having that incident happen. Just like
Yeah.
it's like what day was it?
I
Was it
was
like a
just so
Monday?
confused. Yeah, it was like just any old day, like
It's like
whatever.
what a
And it was
way
just
to
more
start the day.
confusing than anything because I couldn't even be mad because I'm like, well, I don't even know who did it and whatever. And I remember, like we were in Washington Heights and you get used to your neighborhood and just
Hmm.
like literally like in a random 90s TV show or like in the Heights or something,
Hmm.
there's like hood guys on the corner doing what they do
Yeah.
and you get to know them, whatever. And I was just like, man, I wonder if I should try to get them to find out who flipped my car.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? Not like whatever. I broke a window. It was like no harm, no foul. Like whatever. It was like $100 to fix it, and I just kind of got over it. But I had that little car, and I just like ran that
Uh,
car to death. I was so broke. I could like barely pay to like change the oil, and I was running like 5,000 miles. Like
yeah.
before changing the oil and stuff, and um, I always felt bad for the guy who ended up buying it from me because I was just like, it's your problem now, buddy.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. No, man. We've done that. I've done that a few times with cars. Like
I
really
mean,
bad.
you know, you learn your lesson. You break a couple cars, and you're like, okay, I should probably just do at least the minimum.
Yeah, well,
Like,
it took me about maybe 20 years to figure that out.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I think that comes with age and responsibility and just life experience. So you're a boxer. You've been
yeah.
you work at Mendes Box. How did you get into boxing? Is it a lifetime
So
thing?
yeah, so I wanted my whole life to do some sort of form of fighting, and my parents just sort of never really took it serious, and it just wasn't really around us. I grew up watching boxing my whole life, and I was
Mm-hmm.
obsessed. Every big fight we had fight
Mm-hmm.
night at the crib
Yeah.
with the those like old scramblers that you could get like
Mm-hmm.
at the flea market where you could
Yes.
like steal the fights and stuff.
Yes.
We had those, and I remember watching like all the
The
videos of the
box. They always
challenge
call
fight.
it the box.
Yeah, it was just like box. It
Yeah.
was just like box,
Yeah.
and it had like the channels, like
Yeah.
whatever, the little LED things. And so, I remember growing up wanting to do some sort of fighting, and I just didn't know what to do. And my parents would never sort of take me serious on it. And I was really athletic, and I played all the sports, but just kind of grew out of them. Like I loved basketball. I wanted to play
Hmm.
basketball like professionally, and I was okay, for
Yeah.
like a small school in Texas. But then I was just like, oh yeah, Mexican. Like I can't jump, which I'm sure I'm like I don't want to
Yeah.
offend anybody else that can jump that's Mexican, but we're
Yeah.
not known for jumping like that. You
No,
know
we're
what I mean?
not.
We're not known for dunking. Um, and I'm like 5'11", 5'11 and a half on a good day.
Yeah.
Um, and so I lie and say I'm 6 foot, but it says 6 foot on my resume, but don't tell anybody. But you know, I I wasn't growing. All the other sports I grew out of it, whatever. And so I was back in Texas once. The first summer back from school in New York, I went back to Texas, and I grew up my whole life working for my dad doing construction, and we had a tire shop when I was younger, and so one day I was running errands and I got lost, and this was like I was 19ish, and this was still when like smartphones were of no good use.
Hmm.
It was like iPhone 1 era, so the GPS was still kind of garbage and whatever. I don't even know if I had a phone that had GPS. So I would actually use the maps, like the book maps that my
Yeah.
dad gave me. I was lost and I pulled over to look at the book map thingy, and I was stopped at a boxing gym.
Yeah.
And so I was there for the summer, and I went in just because I was there already, and I was like, "Hey, what is this?" And they were like, "It's a boxing gym, stupid." And so it says boxing gym outside.
Boxing gym.
Yeah. And so I was like, "So what's the deal?" And they're like, "It's $35 a month, and just come in, whatever." And that's so cheap, especially considering New York gym prices.
Hmm.
And it was a guy who was an ex-marine, and he ran the gym by himself. And I don't think it exists at all anymore. It was called Sniper Boxing there in San Antonio.
Hmm.
And so that day after work, I just signed up and I went every day that whole summer. And so I came back to New York, and I couldn't afford a gym at all. Like I
Yeah.
could barely afford anything. I was just getting by. At that time, at first I was working like at a wine shop. I was 19,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if that's even legal, but I was selling booze at 19, and whatever. And luckily at City College they had a heavy bag, so I just kept practicing there and whatever, just kept trying to get better. And then you have all these different jobs, and I was eventually like, I worked at the wine shop, and I didn't know anything about wine, and so I just felt stupid. I worked at a cigar place, and I was smoking like 3 cigars a day now from from not smoking any cigars, because they
Yeah.
would encourage us to smoke to know the flavors, and
Yeah.
you do get to know that kind of stuff. But then all of a sudden, I had like a terrible smoking habit,
Yeah.
and at the time when I was younger, I was smoking cigarettes and stuff, just like any stupid kid does.
Yeah,
So
we
I was
all
smoking
did.
cigarettes and smoking cigars. I'm like, this is terrible for me.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? Like, I really want to find a job that it's somewhere I just want to be. And, I loved boxing so much. So I wanted to work in a gym in general. And, um, and so I went to go apply at a 24-hour fitness to be the shake guy, to make
Yeah.
the shakes in the little stand at 24-hour fitness.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get the job. And I was so mad because I was like, what does it take to make a
The
shake,
shake.
like a
Yeah.
smoothie
Yeah.
at a gym? You know what I mean? Like, I'm
Yeah.
not even a trainer. I'm not even anything. Like, I just make smoothies. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't get the job. And around the corner was one of the gyms I had heard about, which was called Mendez Boxing.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that it looked like a Mexican boxing gym. So, in sort of like a naive, sort of like 1930s New York sort of mentality, where I was just like, if I just go in there and the guy is Mexican and he sees who I am and he knows that who I am and what I come from, then, maybe we can work something out.
Yeah.
And so I just finally popped in. I asked how it worked, and they've always done this thing where you can work out for the first time there for free,
Yeah.
and then you'll figure out if you want to go there or not. It was really small at the time. It was on 28th and 5th on the second floor, and next to it, everyone always said that the massage place was like
A rub and
like
tug.
a rub and tug
Yeah.
place. And it was just like some real typical scummy New York stuff. And so, the owner was just like literally an angel sent from heaven. Um, he was from Mexico. And, I sort of told him my situation. I told him I was going to school and stuff, and I couldn't afford the gym and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me, well, every day when you're done with school, come to the gym,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna teach you boxing, and if things work out, then I'll give you a job. And
Yeah.
so I worked there for free for like a month.
Yeah.
And when I first showed up, that day when I went there, I was like, listen, I'll clean the floors, I'll do whatever you ask me to.
Yeah.
I just want to learn. I just want to get better and dedicate myself a lot more to this. And it ended up being the greatest thing ever. Like I said, I ended up working there for free, and eventually they were like, hey, you really got something, and you have fundamentals already
Mm-hmm.
to teach complete beginners, and as you go, we'll keep training you, and you can keep training for free,
Yeah.
and we'll give you a job. And I was getting paid $8 an hour cash at the time
Nice.
to work there, and it was like the most beautiful thing, because he encouraged me to focus on school,
Mm-hmm.
and he basically was like, when you're done with class, then come to the gym.
Yeah.
Don't worry about schedule so much and all that stuff. Like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And so
How nice is
pretty
that?
much, what's up?
How nice is that? That is not common
You
at
know,
all for any
it
jobs.
doesn't happen. And that's the beauty of New York, and that's the beauty of mom and pop, and that's the beauty of our culture, is like when you like, I guess, like people say, like, real recognize real, like he saw where I was coming from, and he saw, you know, um, sort of what I come from. I'm really sort of, I consider myself fortunate to sort of come from a lineage of calloused hands, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
um, and so, it changed my life forever. And I spent the last 10 years there.
Wow.
And earlier this year, God bless his soul, Mendez died of COVID. And,
No.
uh, and the gym hasn't been open all year. And, I don't know where things are going to go from now, but it's been one of the greatest experiences of my life. And through that, I've been able to work in every facet of boxing. I've worked corners for fights.
Mm-hmm.
I've trained people. I've prepared people for fights. I've prepared. I've spent 10 years training. I've gotten to train with some of the most influential, greatest people in boxing.
Yeah.
I got to train one-on-one with Mike Tyson. I got to train one-on-one with Floyd Mayweather Sr. in Vegas.
Yeah.
In San Antonio, I got to train with Jesse James Leha.
Wow.
And for me, it was never about competing because I couldn't even afford the free time to compete
Mm-hmm.
because I was barely able to put food on the table for myself while I was pursuing the acting career and stuff. But for me, it was just to find a place where I could really hang, and
Yeah.
it's super humbling. I trained with Jesse James Leha in San Antonio at his gym. I think it was last year for my birthday,
Yeah.
and he was like, the coolest thing is for people like a Mayweather or something like that, like to them to ask me like, when are you fighting?
Yeah.
You're pro, right? Different things like that.
Yeah.
Jesse James Leha was like, if you want to go pro, I will take you on right now. You know, that kind of stuff. For me, like I could have an amateur record of however many fights, but to have legends like that,
Yeah.
tell me like you could be pro right now. That's all I ever wanted
Yeah.
because my focus has always been on pursuing my acting career, and both acting and boxing are very selfish careers. There's no space for anything else. Like
Yes.
if you're not 100% dialed in,
Mm-hmm.
acting's a little bit gentler. You more get the emotional beating of it, but
Yeah.
boxing's a dangerous sport, and I'm sure if you saw the fights this past weekend,
Man.
you
Yeah.
don't play boxing, there's no room to not
No.
be 100% in there,
No.
and I took too many beatings not being able to be dialed in 100%. So
Yeah.
I learned those lessons, but man, it's been the most beautiful thing for me.
What did you think about those fights this weekend?
Oh man, I love Mike Tyson. The day that I spent with him, he is the sweetest, deepest soul I've probably met. I had an amazing time, and that's why I want to do a bit of a video of my training with him, because he was just so great and so kind to me.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was at Mendez,
Excuse me.
bless you,
Yeah.
COVID sneeze. um, um, it was like the most sort of serendipitous moment. He came to Mendez to do this video series where um, I was the student, he was the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And when he showed up, one of the guys that's one of the trainers at the gym was one of his trainers when he was a teen, and they
Oh,
hadn't
wow.
seen each other since. So when he walked in the door, it was like an extremely emotional moment, and that opened up the door for it to be like the greatest day ever.
Yeah.
And so we had really nice, intimate moments. When they would move the cameras around, it was just me and him, and to hear Tyson be like, "All right, come on, Aldo," you know what I mean? Like different
Yeah.
things like that. It was amazing. So it was great to see him, but I was really scared that either guy would get hurt.
Yeah.
They're grown men, and it would be
Yeah.
really sad to see either of them get knocked out or anything
Yes.
like that. And so I think it was fun for what it was.
Oh, no.
But
Yeah.
it was an interesting night. It was fun, and
Yeah.
they're able to generate a lot of money, and I think they did it all for a good cause. So great for them. But
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
it's such a weird for me, like watching that, because I grew up watching. Roy Jones Jr. was my favorite fighter in the '90s. I would watch every Roy Jones Jr. fight, and watching him and Tyson, I was worried about that. And if like I remember catching myself saying, "Man, this is kind of boring." But then I also got to remember they're 51 and 50.
Yeah.
They're in their 50s, but they're still moving pretty crisp and
Yeah.
solid. And Roy Jones Jr. maybe he wasn't as sharp as he was back in the '90s or in the early
It was
2000s,
slick. It was,
but he was moving.
Yeah.
And he was
It
still
was
throwing
cute. He
those
was doing some good
jabs.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Tyson would catch him with those body shots. They were throwing down, and it's like you see those guys, but the fight preceding it is what people were really talking about more so
Yeah.
was the Nate Robinson. Within 30 minutes, there was memes. Within
Yeah.
30 minutes, there was memes, and I just I don't know. I think that those two guys, Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr., deserved a little bit better before that.
Yeah,
But it is what it is. They box. I think they're old warriors wanting to see what they
yeah, yeah,
got, and it's the thing that I think they've both been curious about doing for many years. Just never worked out. I think
yeah.
Roy Jones
You
Jr. was
know,
saying that Tyson wanted to fight him for a long time, and he wanted to fight Tyson, but it just never worked out scheduling.
yeah. No, I think it's good that it happened now because if they were younger, it probably would have been more unsafe. I
Yeah,
love Roy. I mean, Roy in his prime is one of the greatest of all time. Just
yeah,
amazing, spectacular movement and super unique. And obviously Tyson, but like Roy was still fighting a few years ago, and he
yeah,
was looking terrible, and it was also really sad. Like
yeah,
he shouldn't have been there, and even Mike's last few fights, like he didn't look good
yeah,
15 years ago when he was still
yeah,
fighting. So I didn't expect anything much different, other than they were a little bit more fresh, and there
yeah,
was a little less pressure, and they were doing it for the right reason. So it was cool. I'm glad that worked out. It was
yeah,
fun, and I'm glad they do it for charity and stuff. Like Julio Cesar Chavez has been doing charity fights also,
yeah,
fighting Jorge Arce,
yeah,
and those have been pretty fun too. And it's funny because you know, they're such big stars and legends. Like
yeah,
Julio Cesar Chavez, he would push the ref out of the way, and the
yeah,
rounds were like endless because they'd be like the bell would ring and they just keep going, and
yeah,
they'd have a lot of fun. Um, but I don't know what to think. It's just so weird. I like the legends part. It'd be
mm-hmm,
fun to for charity bring in amazing people
yeah,
to put on the show, and we get to see all the guys that we grew up with loving
yeah,
and all that kind of stuff. But it gets tricky once you start adding a bunch of randos to it beforehand, and I just think it was super dangerous. I still feel really bad for Nate Robinson. I don't think he deserved that, and I think it's also partly his fault for not really taking it serious or not
mm-hmm,
recognizing that he couldn't just start training and turn it around that quickly. Like Jake's young, he's supposedly taking it really serious,
yeah,
and and the thing in boxing is that like you're always gonna run into a ruthless sort of person, and that mentality can take you pretty far if technique isn't there.
yeah,
And so if you're just kind of cold blooded like that, you can really do some damage,
yeah.
and that's what happened. But
Do you feel
I
like
really,
that's going to be a problem coming up in the next few years where a bunch of these YouTubers and just anybody's going to start shouting out? I think Conor McGregor was one of the first people to really start that with the Floyd Mayweather thing.
yeah,
And that kind of opened up a floodgates because the other Paul brother, Logan Paul, and another YouTuber sold out the Staples Center. They
yeah,
sold it out for their fight. Two fights. They had two fights
yeah. I
and
saw
it's
some of
selling it
that
out.
stuff too.
And it's kind of like is this what the trend is going to be for boxing, or do you
Yeah,
you you hope that there's going to be some legitimacy still, hopefully that kind of
yeah.
just goes away as a trend, or you know what I mean?
Exhibition fights have always been a thing.
Mm-hmm,
Um, you know, Chuck Wepner, who's the guy that the Rocky movies are based off of,
mm-hmm,
he got his fame from basically having his Rocky moment against Muhammad Ali, and
mm-hmm.
after that, he had some fame, and he literally fought a bear
Yeah,
one time.
yeah,
Like he literally fought a bear in the ring, like a boxing fight against an
yeah,
actual bear. So these things have been going on forever. It's such a tricky thing. Like I think it's amazing in the world of social media that like really people that deserve it get discovered and all that kind of stuff. But it just gets so weird when even for me, I don't even necessarily call myself a boxer or a fighter because I'm not competing or anything like that.
yeah,
I have too much respect for the people that lay it all on the line.
yeah,
I spent the last 10 years surrounded by amateurs and professionals, who are scraping by in life because they're not getting the opportunities to get good fights.
yeah,
They're getting paid $1,000 or two thousand
oof,
bucks to fight once or twice a year, and they have to prepare for months on end and be in shape and have side jobs and do all this kind of stuff.
yeah,
And so when you see guys like them getting paid so much money, and then guys with real talent who have dedicated their lives to it, um, not get a break. That's the kind of stuff that I don't want to see. But I get that they do it because there's money there, and where there's
Mhm.
money, people are always going to try to capitalize. So that kind of stuff's always going to exist. But I always feel bad for the guys that deserve it and don't get a shot. It's kind of like
Yeah.
the acting world. There's a lot of really good actors, and you see a bunch of people that
Yep.
might not deserve it. And I don't want to downplay anybody else
No, yeah.
because this life is super hard and great for anybody that gets ahead. But there's a lot of great actors that just don't get a shot, and you see a lot of people wasting great opportunities
Yeah.
just doing crazy shit. And
Yeah.
you're like, man, like if the people I know had a chance to do it, they'd have beautiful careers and they'd add something good to the world
Yeah.
as opposed to snorting it up their nose and throwing it away. You know what I mean? So um,
Absolutely.
like so
It's
many actors that we've seen.
and we've seen we have several friends who we've seen from, the hustle to,
Mhm.
barely scraping by to like that instant success, or like it's not
Yeah,
instant, but I mean overnight success is when that pilot airs or when that movie
yeah,
drops. Like you're like they could have been unknown for a year and they shot it.
yeah.
Like, you've done stuff like, when like I remember I did Bad Education was the last thing I did, and I did that
Okay.
in 2018, and that came out in April of this year.
Wow.
So imagine, we know those people who did whatever they did, years ago, and then all of a sudden, boom, that project drops, and then life changes. That
Yeah,
the Instagram likes or the follows go from like
yeah,
25 people to like 25,000 overnight, and it's a
yeah,
crazy game. And it's always been good to see good people succeed, but I get it. Like we you see people that are like, how are they getting all this money?
yeah,
Like, what is the deal with the world?
yeah,
And you see, we know similar people,
yeah,
whether they're female or male or whatever, and
yeah,
no one is giving them the time of day. And you see the good work our friends are doing, or like people that we
yeah,
know are doing. Just it's crazy. It's a crazy business. Nothing's ever promised. And you
yeah.
know or have you ever been surprised by something you've been cast in, like, how did I even book this? You know what I mean?
I've had some weird moments. I remember I went into an audition
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't get any backstory whatsoever. Obviously, no script because a lot of that stuff happens so fast. And if you're doing guest star or co-star stuff, you don't even
Yes.
get that until you start working. Um, but I didn't even get the character breakdown because it was so quick. I want to say it was like a same day audition. I wasn't off book or anything,
Yeah.
and I came in and uh, the casting director was like, this is really heavy stuff, blah blah blah, and I was just like, I I didn't get any of that. Like I didn't. She was like, what do you mean you didn't get any of it? And I was just like, I didn't get anything. Like this happened so quick. And I just got the lines. I worked on them as much as I could, and I'm half reading and I'm trying to be off book as much as I can, and whatever. And she was just like, oh my god. She was like, all right, well let's read now that you know those things. And I read, and I was completely unprepared, and I got the role. You know what I mean?
That's good.
And so I guess they were looking out or whatever, but
Yeah.
then there's stuff where you put your heart and soul into it and you prepared and you coached it and you're
Yes.
completely off book and you could do it blindfolded
Yeah.
and then you don't get that or you don't even get a call back and you feel like you're perfect for it and you're
Yeah.
like I've
Well,
I've done less and gotten away with it, you know
yes.
what I mean?
Well, going back, you said something earlier, a little bit ago, that you said, you're 5'11", that you put that you're 6 foot on the resume. It's a joke, obviously, but here's something that happened to me. I was up for a series reg, for
Yeah,
a show, and it's gonna remain nameless.
yeah,
And the character was part of a Latino gang, from the
yeah,
Dominican. Even throughout the whole script, they talk about this Dominican gang. These guys can barely speak English. They have heavy accents and everything.
yeah,
And I do it. I do the audition, the tape, send it in. I get
yeah.
emails back a couple of times from the producers and the director, and they're saying, "You're our guy. Like, we want you, but it has
Mhm.
to get approval from the network." So weeks go by, and then they they say, "You know what? You're the top runner, but the network wanted to go a different route."
Yeah,
Okay, that's fine. And I don't know how they did it, but they went with the black guy. and that's
Mhm.
fine. That happens to me all the time. And it's either like
Yeah,
they'll either go with the black guy or they go with the Latino when they don't know what kind of gang member they want, but they know they want a gang member, so they go with either
yeah.
black or Mexican.
But they still
So
refuse to go with an actual Dominican person.
exactly,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
yes, and
yeah,
so they went with the black guy, and they kept the whole Latin thing. Like
yeah,
I'm like, okay, I know one of my buddies knows the guy, and he's an awesome guy. So I'm glad that the guy got it. And it's
yeah,
no hate or anything, but it's just that's just part of it, and that's part of the business. I'm not salty about it, but that was one thing. So
yeah,
going back to the height thing, now they're going into another season, and there was a perfect breakdown for another character that works with that character that
yeah.
was for a guy like me. It's a
Mhm.
hitman and blah blah blah. And so I said I was up for a series reg. I told my reps, and so they reached out to casting, and casting said, "You're too short. We want someone
That's crazy.
6 plus." I'm like, I'm 5'10". That's 2 inches away.
Yeah,
First of all, if you don't have the imagination to see me just a little bit taller,
yeah,
how did you have the imagination to see a different ethnicity in the first place? You know what I mean? Like, come
yeah.
on, people. It's
That's
just
the thing. I
it.
feel like I try to not say I'm 6 foot because then I feel stupid.
Mhm.
So I'm like, that was something I sort of tried, and I don't know if it even makes a difference because then there's the whole thing where the opposite can happen,
Mhm.
where you're playing, like, let's say you do a guest star and you're
Yeah.
playing opposite the lead, and
Yeah.
they're, it's, the dude's 5'8",
Yes.
and you can't be bigger than him. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Or you can't be too much bigger than him, or different things like that. And so whatever, I'm just honest now. Like I wear boots, and I really am roughly like 5'11" and a half, and
Mhm.
I always wear boots. So then I'm like 6 foot or 6'1" with boots on. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
like boots have the little heel. Like
Mhm.
I wear cowboy boots or different things like that, and
Real
and that's
Texan.
just how I am. Whatever. And so then I'm like, well, I guess I'm taller, or whatever. Like I don't know what I'm. I guess it's like, what are we counting? Are we counting barefoot? Like I'm not gonna be barefoot on set. You know what I mean? Like, and so there's that kind of stuff. But you know, going back to sort of like casting going all willy nilly, like after and not casting what feels like should be accurate.
Yeah.
You know, like Breaking Bad was like one of the greatest series ever, right? Like
Mhm.
almost like perfection all the way through. But one of the things I hated was how they cast a lot of non-Mexican people
Yes.
to play even these disgusting, stereotypical roles. Which for that show, I'll be a gangbanger all day long. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you have guys that have been working for literally like decades
Mhm.
who are not even at all Latino,
Mhm.
speaking the worst broken Spanish ever, and they're supposed to be these guys from Mexico.
Yeah.
And I remember being so mad that on my resume, like one of the first things that I put in my special skills was genuinely fluent Spanish,
Yeah.
because it was my first language, but I grew up in the U.S. So
Mhm.
eventually, my English became dominant. But I'm 100% fluent, and I take pride in that for myself. And so I'll give you a little story of, and I'm sure you used to do pay to meets a little bit, right? I don't know if you ever did that kind of stuff where you go to like Actors Connection or different places, and
I did
you'd
once or
pay to
twice.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. So back when I had no reps or anything, I would invest in that kind of stuff just to be seen by casting directors and stuff.
Mhm.
And it was always hit or miss, and it was really hard because, like, in a way, I didn't know how to prepare and all that stuff. And you're really on
Yeah.
your own, and so you're paying all this money, and those kind of places sometimes they're helpful, but a lot of the times they're just taking your money and they're not really going to help you.
Mhm.
Excuse me. So I so one time I paid for this big thing to go in front of, like, it was like two different sessions where you'd go in front of five casting directors at a time. So I
Yeah.
did my scene, and I remember like not doing that well, and being frustrated and whatever. But I was like, whatever, beyond that. And so the casting director started giving me notes, and it was like kind of helpful stuff. And then, bro, I'll never forget this. And I remember having to sort of go after them afterwards, because you take pride in your culture, you take pride in who you really are. I take pride that my family's from Mexico, and I spent a good majority of my life being in South Texas, and being so close to the border, going and spending every summer in Mexico and
Mm-hmm.
just staying there with my family and speaking Spanish in a way that I think will aid a lot of these shows, right?
Yes.
And so I had that genuinely fluent Spanish on my resume. One of the casting directors, they're giving me notes like, you should do this, you do that. And one of them goes, yeah, and I'm looking at your resume and in the special skills, when I see this genuinely fluent in Spanish, the first thing that comes to mind is we're going to have like some sort of visa problems or, it's just going to make it difficult to work. And immediately, like, I paid to be in front of these professionals. I have not a credit to my name. And I'm in literally a room full of people, other actors, like 20 other actors who are
Yeah.
about to go next. And you have to perform in front of them, you have to perform in front of the casting directors. And I just had to eat it, I just had to eat it because
Wow.
I was young. I was maybe 22. I had never worked. I didn't want to piss anybody off.
I know the feeling. Yeah.
And you're just minding your own business. And I remember leaving there just so offended. And luckily, I was able to, rely on resources like Intar. For people
Mm-hmm.
that don't know, Intar, it's the
Yeah.
oldest Latino theater company in the country. And, that's where we had space to grow and do work and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And
Or we
so, and
met.
that's where we met.
Yeah.
And so I was able to reach out to them and be like, you know what, like this person is genuinely offensive, and whether they mean it or not, that was a pretty racist thing to say. Because
Yeah.
if I was a white appearing wherever I was from, they might even be like, wow, you know how to speak Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I was Russian and I said I spoke Russian and I was white appearing and I seemed American the way I would assume I seem American,
Mm-hmm.
um, they'd be like, oh, that's great that you know a language or whatever. But because I'm Latino and because I spoke Spanish, now she's starting to question my legal status in the country.
That's
You know what I
awful.
mean?
Yeah.
And I was able to reach out to Intar, and because they have connections with casting directors, they were actually able to get to the person who owns that casting company. And I don't ever know what happened to her, but I've never seen her and I've never
Yeah.
heard of her again. And she was actually a fiance to a really, really successful actor. And I don't know if that's how she got into casting.
Oh,
But she was
probably.
young. She was maybe just a few years older than us, and I would never wish anything bad on anybody. But I hope she's not in the business anymore because I'll take it on the chin
Yeah.
for others, but for
It's
anybody else, that's disgusting. You know
it's
what I mean?
disgusting, and that's one isolated incident of what
Yeah,
happened to you. So what has this person told other actors? Maybe
yeah.
not
What kind of
Latinos, maybe
prejudice
like
has she
like
gotten away
black,
with?
what if they said something about an African American or a black actor, or even an overweight actor. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, you're just too hefty. You know what I mean? Like it's that they do say these sort of things, and it never goes checked. It
yeah,
goes unchecked all the time. And not only does it affect the actor, because this casting director felt the I guess the need to say this to you, but you just
yeah,
said you had to perform a scene in front of other people, and all these other people witnessed it. But what if you're in a one-on-one situation? This was like the big job, and they said this to you,
yeah,
after an audition that you prepared your heart out for, right? And
yeah.
so this person is kind of like the gatekeeper in a way.
Of course. Yeah,
And then you are leaving that office knowing I'm not going to book this. And then
yeah,
also, is this my career now? Do I have to change this? Is this like how casting directors see me? And so it
yeah.
plays a mental
Should I
thing with
whitewash
you.
myself to make
Yeah.
them more comfortable?
Yeah.
If this would have been a one-on-one real audition for the job,
Mm-hmm.
if I would have spoken up, I could have possibly gotten like blacklisted
Yeah.
from that casting company because she could have said, "Oh no, he freaked out on me," and I didn't even say anything, and she wouldn't
Yeah.
even have to provide context for that, but
Yeah.
be like, "Oh no, don't bring him back in because he's crazy. He got aggressive with me or something like that,"
Yeah.
and that's the kind of thing when you're starting off, you don't want to ruin future chances. Um, But I wish that would have happened to me later, sort of in life. I
Yes.
mean, obviously, I wish it never happened in general.
No, yeah.
But hopefully, it was for good, and she learned her lesson.
It's
But I wish it would have happened to me later in life because it would have been better that all those people were there because I would have
yes.
ripped that ass apart
Yeah.
nowadays. Now I would have been like, are you that ignorant that you have to
Yeah.
question my legal status in this country because you know, um, you're too stupid to understand that people could, be multi-ethnic, or I'm not even multi-ethnic. I'm 100% Mexican. Like my
Hmm.
family's from Mexico. I was just born here. I
Hmm.
could have been born anywhere else, and I still would have just been 100% Mexican. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, uh, the things we sort of go through, it's crazy, but
It's that fear at
it's
the
tough.
beginning, right? Is the
Yeah,
when we're young actors and we're like starting off in this industry where we feel like we can't say anything because that could potentially jeopardize the future for us.
yeah, yeah,
Whereas like if we have agents, luckily if we have agents, and for me, for the big part of like the first couple of years, I didn't utilize that to my advantage because there were some situations where I needed my agents to step in and say some things
yeah,
so I wouldn't be labeled the difficult guy. So
yeah,
basically I kept my mouth shut, and then I didn't even tell my agents, and
yeah,
so I just dealt with this whole thing. And it was like one audition experience in particular where, it's just a really awful experience. And I just ate it up. And I know that if I would have just called my agents right after that and said, "What the fuck did you send me on? Like,
yeah,
this is what happened," they would have pounced on that. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And I just felt like I didn't want to be, the crybaby kind of trouble actor because, I need these opportunities.
yeah.
But it's really it's a rock and a hard place for a lot of actors.
I had a situation where it was a show that I would be really, really good on, right?
Hmm.
And I auditioned for it, and then a friend of mine got one of the lead roles in it, and so we went to dinner to celebrate, and the director of the series came to dinner, and by chance, everybody sat at the table, and I happened to sit right next to him and right next
Yeah,
to my friend. So we chop it up. We just have a regular good time having
yeah,
dinner. And so my friend hits me up a few days later and he's like, "Hey, I'm pitching you to the producers, and me and the director are rooting for you to try to get you onto this show."
yeah.
And so I was just like, "What? That's crazy, Like, it's amazing. It's one of the few moments where that kind of stuff happens, and you can't even imagine it does."
Hmm.
And at the time I was starting to work a bunch. I had just come off series regular on the BBC when I went to go shoot in
Oh
Ireland,
yeah.
and I had come back and I was booking little small local roles on all the stuff like Blind Spot and all the local things
It's
that we're
funny that
shooting
you
here in New
say that
York.
though, that they're small local roles, but these are national TV spots. These are huge. You're
Well,
Cole, you're on Blind Spot. Like, come on,
yeah.
these are big.
No, it's definitely
It's local
great,
to
but
New
I
York.
had like one or two line type things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why I consider it sort of small. But things were flowing for me, and I just had gotten these agents and stuff, and it was the first time I had been signed to an agency, and so things
Hmm.
were going really well. And I was like, man, I'm perfect for this show. I already auditioned and I did a good job. All I need is the juice to carry me through,
Yeah.
and now I've got it. People are standing up for me, and so they had me read again a generic role that was used to just test actors out, and I do it, and they're like, "You did great. You're booked. We just don't know for what yet. We're just gonna find you something."
Hmm.
And it was again a super unique opportunity that's never happened to me in any other situation,
Yeah.
and I was thrilled, and I was just like, "Whoa, this is crazy!" Like, whatever. And so I end up booking the role, and it ends up being like, you know, one scene, one day's work, but it was like two or three little paragraphs.
Hmm.
Um, Also, I was gonna get to work in Spanish, which was like a goal for me,
Yeah.
and I was gonna get to do the full scenes in Spanish, and it was funny, and and it was, I was sort of leading the scene, and I had funny things to say, and
Yeah.
whatever. And so I'm like, you know what? This has all worked out. Um, I didn't know what was going to come out of it. So whatever, awesome. Like,
Hmm.
they helped me get a job on a great show.
Yeah.
And so I was like, cool, like no sweat. obviously, like I'm not too big for it, or like we talked about being humble and all that kind of stuff. Like I was just like, yeah, of course, like I'll work because I want to work all the time.
Yeah.
And so then a week before, you know, 3 weeks before they're updating the script. 2 weeks before they're still updating. Like 5 days before, I get it, and they gave my lines to the other guy, and now I
Mhm.
have like 3 words, and I'm literally just like interjecting, and then he keeps going. So
Yeah.
it went from like 3 paragraphs to now I have like 3 words, and
Yeah.
all I'm doing is being like, oh, but that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, it's the first time I have agents, and I'm looking at all the situations that happen. I'm like, the director is cool with me, my friends on it. The next season that they're doing it, I'm even better for. And, I don't want to do this. Like, I really want to be on the show. I don't
Yeah.
want to just have 3 seconds on the show.
Yeah.
And, I have these agents and stuff. And so I'm like, hey guys, like, we're a week out and I don't want to do this. And I don't know what happened, but they gave away all my lines, and it just seems like such a waste of an opportunity. And this show's going to keep going for several seasons. Like they were approved for like another 3 seasons, and they're still
Yeah.
going today. And I'm like, I think there's space for me to be on the show later. And if everybody's rooting for me, then why should I take this role?
Yeah.
And so they're like, I totally understand. I'm going to fix this right now, which
Yeah.
was amazing for them to try to fix it for me. And then the shit hit the fan. Like everything starts going crazy. My friend calls me frantically, like, what the hell did you do? Casting and the producers just called me and they were like, who the hell is this guy? Who the hell does he think he is? I thought you said he was your friend and he was a good guy and all this stuff. And the agents are like, I don't know if I can get you off of this and it's going to look really bad. And basically, casting hits me back where that almost like to the T, they're like, it'll be a really bad thing for your career if you back out on us right now.
Oh
Basically,
man.
threatening my future
Yeah.
to not take the scraps like we talked about
Yeah.
before.
I think I know which
And
project you're talking about. But yeah.
yeah, I don't want to say
Yeah,
any
no, no, no.
names.
I no, no,
And
no, no, no.
so and so it really even put me and my friend in a terrible situation because I'm like, dude, I'm not trying to be a dick and be high and mighty.
Yeah.
But why do I have to settle for the scraps always? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I just came from a series regular. I just got agents. I booked 3 shows in 3 months beyond that when I came back.
Mm-hmm.
And now, I'm just kind of getting thrown to the side.
Yeah.
And I ended up having to take it. And I'm glad I did
Yeah.
because it ended up working out better. I show up to set, and it's the director that I met that I hung out with, and we became friends
Yeah.
to a certain extent. He's not a really close friend of mine, but we spend time around each other. He's a really great guy. I love him, and I would work with him any day of the week. And I don't know how much he knew about what was going on,
Mm-hmm.
but we show up to set, and he gets the script, and he goes, "Throw that shit away. We're gonna improvise the whole scene, and we're gonna do it all in one take."
Oh wow.
In one shot. We're gonna do it in one whole shot, and we're gonna improvise the whole thing. And I'm like, dude, I just got in like the biggest fight, pissing off casting directors, pissing off producers,
Yeah.
and all this stuff to show up, and we just completely improvised the whole thing. Nothing to do with what was written on the page.
Yeah.
That was the problem in the first place. And I'm like, man, this was such a mess of a situation. And to this day, my friend is kind of like, oh, but that time I tried to get you that job, you got me in a world of trouble. And I'm like, well, dude, like, I was just trying to stand up for myself. And
Yeah.
luckily, I had the agents to sort of even get in the way and also to blame them. Like, I was just like, oh, it was them that were saying I shouldn't do it, blah, blah, blah. And it was a little bit of both.
Yeah.
They were both like, it was me and it was them being like, you shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah.
If everybody's rooting for you, why should you have to do it?
Yeah.
And so, it was again one of those situations where you just have to sort of take it, and then you just live in fear that you just piss people off, like, and
Yeah.
it's frustrating. You don't
No.
know the ramifications of it, I don't think I was necessarily in the wrong.
Yeah. No.
Um,
It's a
it
tough.
was,
Like for me, I don't know if I could do that. And I've toyed around with that idea of, I've started getting comfortable turning down auditions. Not just like
yeah,
job, like, but like there's been a few where I'm just like, no. I can't do this anymore. Like I've already
Yeah.
done like several guest stars. I've done a couple of recurring. And it's like, why am I going to go back and do a one liner or a two liner? Unless it's like a one liner and something really huge. Like, Christopher Nolan wants
Yeah.
me to do a one line
Yeah.
thing in his next movie. Yes, sign me
Of
up for
course.
that. I will
Yeah.
do that. But, it's coming to a point where I'm learning my value as an actor and a human being, and like the work that I've done,
Yeah.
the resume that I've created, and it's like now it's like I can say no to certain
Yeah.
things. It's just picking my battles. I'm not as comfortable doing. You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
whole thing. I probably would have just sucked it up and taken it, and I would have complained all the way home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I that's just me. I would have done it, and I don't think that I should be like that as much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's hard. It's very hard because at the end of the day, it's
Yeah.
like you said, are you going to get blacklisted? Is this cat like does that
Yeah.
really
Like we don't know how
happen?
much it takes. You know what I mean? Like what
Yeah.
it takes, especially when when you're not at a place where they could be like, oh well, he's this kind of way, but he's big, so we gotta
Yeah.
let him do his thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, it's tough. Like even when I say that it's smaller stuff or whatever, like obviously, again, I'm super grateful for any little thing. I'm super grateful for even that job. I just said a few things, but I got to work in Spanish. I got to be on a really great show. You know, it was one of those things where people were like, "You were in that show," and I'm like, "Yeah, I was in it for 3 seconds in
Yep.
one scene of one episode." But still to this day, people are like, "Oh my god," and
Yeah.
whatever. But it's one of those things that it's just not helpful. It's not gonna better your career
No, not at
when you
all.
take these jobs and you're like, I gotta pay the bills. I want to be active. I want my credits to be active. I don't want to go a year where it looks like I didn't do anything and that kind of
That's
stuff.
how I'm
And
feeling right now.
that
That's
happens,
tough.
and that's normal. It's one of those things where again, I learned to not sweat it because if you care and you're doing the right thing, when they see you again and when you get that role, doesn't matter if there were 5 years in between where you didn't get anything.
Mm-hmm.
When you stand out, you stand out. For me, in a way, I've gotten to work on cool stuff, but absolutely nobody knows who I am, and
Yeah.
that's perfectly fine for me because the day I do pop off, people are gonna be like, "This guy came out of nowhere." But
Yeah.
instead, I've been investing the better part of a decade on trying to be a good actor, and I don't know if I'm even there yet, but I know I'm focused on getting better and doing the right things. And I've never been one to try to be on TV just so I could say that I am, or
Yeah.
be an actor so I could show off. I want to do this, and I want to do it for a lot of different reasons. It's again going back to family and where we come from. It's so much bigger. When my family's had to sacrifice and do all kinds of crazy things for me to represent them, also to the establishment and to the privilege of everyone else that gets away with it. For me, like standing my ground and putting my foot down and being in the middle of this business is sort of like a rebellious punk rock sort of middle finger to the man to be like,
Yeah.
you know what? You don't want to hire us. You don't want to be diverse. You don't want to hire authentic, diverse people. I'm gonna stand my ground and I'm gonna stand here, and you're not gonna move me. In rebellion,
Yeah.
in opposition of the establishment. I'm not going anywhere, motherfucker. Like, what are you gonna do
Yeah.
about it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
I
and
like that.
so, you know, I'm in it.
Yeah.
Um,
Hopefully it starts picking up really soon. I think it's going
you
to.
know, It definitely is. Again, talking to my neighbor who does sound, there's 70 productions going on right now.
That's
Um,
not
yeah,
bad.
and like a month ago, it was like 30 something. And
Yeah.
so all the local shows are starting to pick up. And, I spoke to one of the casting directors I just auditioned for. She's amazing. And I told her, when I see you, she's one of the few Latinx casting directors that I know of, and she's young and she's super helpful, and I'm sure you know her
Mm-hmm.
also. I don't want to say her name just to not put
Yeah.
her on the spot, but it was really cool because during the pandemic we started following each other on Instagram, and I'm like, how
Mm-hmm.
great is that? Because
Yeah.
again, you don't know how close you can be to these casting directors, and ride that line of professionalism, but also trying to build a relationship.
Yeah.
And I hit her up and I was just like, you know what? Like when I see you and I see what you represent, I see family and I feel comfortable and I know you always give me a fair shot. and I trust you. So if you have any notes or if you have anything for me to get better, like that's all I care about.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do, but even not booking, she was like, listen, I think you're really talented, and you know unfortunately it's not up to me and it's not up to you sometimes to get booked. It's up to the producers and the
Yep.
network and different things like that. And as long as I have people rooting for me, as long as there's places like Intar, as long as there's places like Labyrinth and the community that we built there, people like you, people like her that I feel like are rooting for me, then I don't need to go anywhere. You know what
Yeah.
I want to book, I want to be busy, I want to do great things, but the journey doesn't end because people want me to be here,
Yeah.
and that's all that matters to me. Taking this year, it feels like almost off from acting. On my IMDb, 2020 won't say anything probably.
Mine will
Um,
not say anything at all either.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so
2020, 2019.
a younger version of me would have sweat that, but I'm not going anywhere, and so it's one of those things where it's just another year to get better, and it's another year to grow, and it's another year to add depth to my humanity and to my skill. You
Yeah.
know, um, I'm sure as soon as you had your daughter, there's a whole new layer to that onion that you've peeled off. And I know just even
Yep.
the thought of my daughter coming and having her soon,
Yeah.
there's
It'll
there's a
change.
whole there's a whole new level of me that just got uncovered, and all of that is going to translate into the work that I do. And so that's the beauty of it, is that you're never too old. You're never even too young. Life as it takes you is one of the greatest tools
Yeah.
to continue to grow.
Yeah.
So
Let me tell you a story I had. So Rosa was still pregnant. So it was March of 2019. And I
yeah,
had gone in for this HBO series. And the director was Derek Cianfrance. It's a Mark Ruffalo show. I already knew that the show was going to be amazing. It's out right now. It's called I Know This Much Is True. And so I had a one-on-one. I got to that point where I had a one-on-one with the director, Derek Cianfrance. And we did not talk about the show at all.
yeah,
All we talked about was being fathers. And he asked me, about, the same thing. Like you meet with the director, and the director asked, so tell me about yourself. I was like, oh, my wife is pregnant. He's like, oh man, let me tell you something. Like being a father, it's an amazing experience. It's like, let me tell you, like that experience of me having my kids, it kind of gave me this new motivation in life to just work
yeah,
harder. It gave me my work more meaning, and it gave me, just a lot more to live for you, because you're now living for other people, these little
yeah,
people that you created. And we talked just about being fathers and like sleep. And like, he's like,
yeah,
we had this weird theory. He's like, when your wives, when they're pregnant, they pee all the time. And it's like, I don't know, I could be wrong, but like my theory is like maybe that's just like nature gearing us up to get ready for when you don't sleep when the baby's born, because you're
yeah,
going to be getting up constantly when the baby's born. It's just
yeah,
feeding or crying, or whatever it is. It's a crazy experience. And so we talked about that, and it just put things into perspective. I didn't get the job. I
yeah,
didn't get it. But that meeting, that was the most, I would have to say, in my career, that was the most influential callback one-on-one meeting with the director I've ever
yeah.
had in my life. I would still love to work with him
Of course,
eventually,
yeah,
but that made me want to work with him even more.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And I didn't get the job. I mean, but it was, I think about it now. I still think
yeah,
about it to this day, where these were just two fathers,
yeah,
talking about it. And you're gonna have like the most awesome journey coming up in the next week starting.
yeah,
And it's just
yeah,
you'll remember the moments where Dio starts feeling like, I think I'm in labor, I think I have
yeah,
contractions. Like, are you sure? It's like, I don't know. It's like,
yeah,
because every woman will tell you what contractions are. Like like with Rosa, like every woman told her what contractions are, but it's just a hard thing to explain and until they start feeling the contractions. And it's it's a crazy experience. And then all this acting stuff you forget about. You
Yeah.
forget about it for the moment you see your baby, the moment you're there, with Dio, and she's pushing, and you realize how much more you work the nurse does than the doctor. Like, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. It's like
Yeah.
all these things in the hospital. Like when Anapa was born, she was born on Memorial Weekend, that Friday of Memorial Weekend, and we had to drive in from Jersey through the Holland Tunnel, through all that traffic.
Yeah.
It's a
That's crazy.
huge mess, man. And it's like one of
Yeah.
those experiences you'll always remember is the labor, the day
Yeah.
of everything you're doing. And I think the last good sleep I had was, I think, May 23rd,
That's
2019.
nuts, bro.
Yeah, like I can
The
remember
last good sleep of
like the
my life.
last good sleep. I mean, I sleep now like on a bus sleeping through
Yeah.
the night, but it's just never the same. Like my alarm clock
Yeah.
is
I
my
can imagine.
kid, and she likes to wake up earlier than I want to wake up, and it's just worth it
Yeah.
though,
Of
because
course.
you get to
Yeah.
spend that time with your child. And
Yeah.
I think these hiatuses and stuff is kind of a good it's a good thing sometimes,
Yeah.
that we're not working right now, that we're there to be there for our wives and
Yeah.
for our children. And when the time is right, it's like when Yul Vasquez said, like when if it's meant to be, when it's meant to be, it's gonna happen. Just
Absolutely.
keep doing what you're doing. Doesn't mean you stop the hustle. Like, you've got your YouTube video, which looks freaking awesome. Like, I look at my stuff that I'm putting out, and it's like mine is very. I'm an idiot when it comes to technology, to editing, or
It's
anything like
hard.
that. I don't
Yeah.
know anything like that. Like me, I just hit record, and then I really don't edit. And I hope the sound is
Yeah.
okay with this, because I
Yeah.
was already having that, but I barely learned how to put like words over pictures to make a thumbnail. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I'm
Well,
a
that's where the apps on all these things. Like I got the iPad Pro
yeah.
this year, and it was like a game changer because there's all these editing apps as opposed
Hmm.
to like using like Final Cut and all that like
Yeah.
super scary stuff that's like difficult. And
Yeah.
so all that stuff facilitates that so much better. But it's funny because you just like play with these apps that have these like cool features that look like you did something, but like um, also I think it just comes from especially like now we've been in this business for such a long time. Like there's a level of understanding
Hmm.
of like putting these things together. But yeah, I absolutely hate editing.
Hmm.
And if I wasn't using an app on the iPad
Yeah.
to even put that little 15-20 second intro that I want to use, so that's going to be the intro to the videos that I put out. But if it wasn't for that stuff, it would be way more of a headache. And it's funny because I wanted to do some of that YouTube stuff more, but I don't want to have like a YouTube sort of
Yeah.
thing going on, you know what I mean? But through this year, I realized even like last year, I started singing again for the first time in like a long time. And these are all, I have like a lot of things that people aren't aware of. And these are things that I know I can do,
Hmm.
but other people don't know I can do. So when I sort of put it out there, people are like, where did this come from? And so this time is a perfect opportunity to just provide more resources to be seen for the things that I have going on. A lot of people were replying to the Tyson stuff that I was putting on Instagram because they just started following me,
Yeah.
and I haven't posted it in a really long time because that was like 2012, 2013 that I met him,
Yeah.
and so there's a lot of people that have never seen that, and so they were like, "Where the hell did that come from?" And
Yeah.
and so I'm like, these are stories that I sort of need to tell. I want to provide a space where, for me, I get every once in a while, at least a few times a year, like an audition where I have to record a song off the cuff. And
Hmm.
I'm like, man, if I just had a good video of me singing a song already, I wouldn't be stressing out trying to pick a song, try to record it, try to, do all these things and
Yeah.
be stressed out about it in a 1 or 2 day turnaround time for the audition. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna use that as a resource to to have more examples of what I do and what I'm capable of, and tell my story a little bit more. But I'm not really looking to pursue like a whole YouTube lifestyle. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
No. I do the YouTube just to almost like, you know how Instagram has stories.
Yeah.
So I use I have the podcast, so I post a video podcast on there, and
Yeah.
I had to get a new computer because I'm trying to edit down the clips to all this, like, so
Yeah.
I'm using the Joe Rogan model where, he has the clips and he also has the full,
Totally.
podcast, and I also have just started, releasing these just mini videos, like 10-minute videos, just like thoughts throughout the day, and it's
Yeah.
like I call them like
Which I think works great for you. You know what
my
I mean? Like you
isolated
were like,
incidents.
hey
Yeah,
guys,
yeah.
like and subscribe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Don't
yeah.
forget to hit, yeah. And it's like
Yeah.
I'm doing
Full day
crazy.
of eating, Jorge. You know what I mean?
And I'm not even doing anything crazy. I tried that. If you
Yeah.
look at some of the older videos, I tried the
Yeah.
vlogging thing. A,
Yeah.
I hate editing. I'm not good at it. And B, it just takes too much energy. And I have, my life
Yeah.
that I'm living. So if you look at the newer videos, like I'm here in the same seat doing those same videos,
Yeah.
just here though. And I don't know what it'll be. I just think it's just another way to communicate. And yeah, I don't know. Like it's I think YouTube still has that stigma of, if you're gonna be a YouTuber or a social media
Yeah.
influencer, but it's
Yeah.
different though because a lot of,
It's different now. I think it's
yeah.
evolving. It's getting the credibility. You're
Hmm.
seeing a lot of people, especially during the pandemic.
Yes.
Every single actor was like, "Oh my God, how do I make money?" Every single music artist was like, "How do I make money?"
Yep.
Even fighters, like a lot of boxers that didn't have social media presence, they had to invest in these kind of things because they have to find a way
Yeah.
to keep being out there and to share their story a little bit more, which is cool because like there's a lot of people that we want to see what they're up to, like
Yeah.
um, different fighters and stuff. Like I want to see their day-to-day regimen. That's
Yeah.
something I pay attention to.
Yeah.
I've always paid attention to the way people train and the way people, do certain things. I don't want to see, people do different stuff and to each their own. But
Yeah.
I think now there's a nice transition where we're getting comfortable as a society, putting a little bit more of ourselves out there, and it's
Hmm.
much less of like this mystical actor where they're like, I
Yes.
heard he does this thing, and like
Yeah.
I heard, I heard Bill Murray came into a party and washed somebody's dishes. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
it's much less of this mystical thing, and more people
You
want to
have
just like relate and just
yeah.
be there with you.
Yeah.
You know what
You
I
have
mean?
Bill
Like,
Murray actually filming himself go into that party. Like he's like, look what
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
doing. I'm washing dishes. Yeah,
yeah.
it's a different world now. Um, Before we go, what if you had a dream role or a project you would like to do? What would it be?
Oh man.
I mean, it doesn't have to be like, even it could be in stage, it could be whatever,
Yeah,
or it could
yeah.
be something it hasn't been created yet, like
I'm
maybe like a
terrible
comic
at
book.
like favorite anything. Like I don't have a favorite color. I don't have like a
I'm
favorite
Yeah.
film or anything like that. I just feel like there are characters out there that define certain things
Hmm.
that they affect a lot of different things. I want to do. I want a character that affects people in a multitude of ways. I want the film to be great. I want
Hmm.
people to want to be like that character.
Yeah.
I like when characters influence fashion.
Mm.
Also, I like when again the actors from their work's point of view also sort of change the game of how you approach things. I can't pinpoint one thing. I just know that my goal and in general is to try to reach the highest point I can to represent my family and represent people that are like me, that are different, that aren't sort of the traditional landscape of what it's been,
Yeah.
and to inspire people to do great things and to not be limited by their circumstances. And so,
Uh,
whatever route that takes, whether it be TV or film or even theater, I just want to do things that creates a shift in society for a better world. And whether that be even just from the work or from a job that gives me the platform to do that as a human. And so, that's where I'm fortunate to be at in life, is that I see sort of the bigger scope of things and what I represent beyond myself.
Yeah.
And that's all I want in life is to in a time like 2020, especially after the election and all that kind of stuff, to be a person that provides hope. Um,
Amazing.
and so
Yeah,
yeah,
no, beautifully said. Beautifully said. Can we
awesome.
find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram at AU 2.0,
Yeah.
the evolution of Aldo, and on YouTube just under Aldo Uribe, and hopefully you can find me on a TV near you.
Yeah. And if times
Yeah.
get rough, you could probably get an OnlyFans and make a lot of money.
Yeah, I'll just start twerking in a chicken suit or something. I don't know what I'll do.
I'm getting close to that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Awesome, man.
But
This has
I
been
love you,
great.
brother. It's good to
Love you
see
too,
you.
man. Give my love to
Uh,
Dio. You don't have to hang up yet, but I'm gonna hit stop
yeah.
record in just a little bit. And it's been great. Everybody who's been watching and listening, thank you for joining. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below.
Like and subscribe.
Hit subscribe. And on iTunes and Spotify, you can find this podcast, Jorge's Isolation Podcast. Leave nice reviews, share it. Thank you for joining us, and be kind to one another. Have a good one.